you so much for preparing everything. I'm just gonna walk you through the agenda. So first, we're gonna hear a report from the chair, a report from the executive director. Then I'm going to say a few words about what this event is, what it means for us to be here tonight. Then Lauren Lee, one of our We Power NYC ambassadors, is going to give us a presentation about the pilot launch of our ambassador program. Then we'll hear spoken testimony from about 17 young people, and then we'll have about 10 minutes for open comments and questions. And then members of the board, if you have comments or questions after someone gives a testimony, after someone provides testimony, please just use the raise hand function, and Jordan will call on you that way. That'll help make things run smoothly. But any questions before we move ahead? Excellent. So if we want to go ahead and start off with the reports, feel free to take over. Thank you.
Naomi, Chair, you're muted.
Okay. All right. Good evening and welcome to tonight's public hearing hosted by the New York City Voter Assistance Advisory Committee. My name is Naomi Zauderer, and I serve as chair of this advisory committee in addition to my role as a member of the New York City Campaign Finance Board. I'm joined by my fellow members of the Voter Assistance Advisory Committee, including Danielle Gerard, Joan Gibbs is planning to join us, Christopher Malone, and then we have two others who might also be joining us, Okwadiri Onyadum and Mazida Akhtar Udin. The executive director of the New York City Board of Elections, Michael Ryan, and public advocate Jumani Williams both serve as ex officio members of this committee. Tonight, we are pleased to hold our second annual We the Young People hearing, an exciting opportunity to hear young New Yorkers express their ideas for increasing civic engagement among the city's youngest voters and future voters. The reason we're devoting this hearing exclusively to young voters for the second year in a row, and the reason so much of our work is focused on them, is because young New Yorkers are less likely to register and vote compared to their older counterparts, especially in local elections. Everyone assembled for this hearing is committed to changing that. We want to get more young people involved in local politics and government, and we want to hear directly from young people about how we might do that. In addition to hosting public hearings, this committee recommends legislative and administrative changes to improve New York City elections. Often, the recommendations we make arise from testimony provided in hearings like tonight's. Before we get started, I want to mark the passing of legendary civil rights activist and long-serving member of the U.S. House of Representatives, John Lewis. It is fitting for us to remember his life during this youth hearing because Mr. Lewis was just 20 years old, no older than some of the people we will hear from tonight, when he organized sit-ins at segregated lunch counters in Nashville, Tennessee. When we consider how his monumental legacy connects to the work of this committee, we should understand New York City's unique commitment to the voting rights of its citizens. Our city charter explicitly mandates the creation of the Voter Assistance Advisory Committee and charges it with encouraging and facilitating voter registration and voting among all New Yorkers who are eligible to vote. Beyond that, the charter calls on us to increase voter registration and participation rates among city voters who are underrepresented at the polls. At this moment in our city's history, that means specifically young voters and naturalized citizens. We should view the city's voter participation mandate as part of John Lewis's legacy. What is so surprising, 55 years after the passage of the Voting Rights Act, is not that this mandate exists, but that it is so rare. So, while there have been widespread calls to pass a Voting Rights Act nationally and at the state level, we should go further. We should make sure that this mandate in New York City's charter, a commitment to protecting the voting rights and encouraging the participation of all eligible voters, is likewise enshrined in law at every level of government across the country. Imagine how much better our elections could be if we had a commitment from every level of government in this country to make sure the voices of the underrepresented are given a chance to speak for themselves, and that governments are responsive to those concerns. Through this committee, we have helped facilitate changes, including early voting, ranked choice voting, automatic registration, among others that have or will give voters more of a say in their elections. Clearly, it is important to recognize that New York City's elections remain imperfect, as illustrated in the June primaries. However, we have a local government that responds to those issues and pushes for change. So in saying that, I want to give a warm welcome and sincere thank you to all of the young people assembled on this call today for participating and your commitment to creating a better democracy for all of the voters of this city. I now turn to Amy Loprest, Executive Director of the New York City Campaign Finance Board, for her report, and then we will be getting started on tonight's testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for attending. I'll just give you a little bit of an update from the campaign finance side of our work. Since our last Voter Assistance Advisory Committee meeting, we had the July 15th disclosure statement filing for candidates who are running for municipal election in the campaign finance program. We had 203 candidates file for the 2021 elections. And since that filing in July, we've had another more than 40 candidates register. That filing in July will be the basis for our first public funds payment that will happen on December 15th. Again, you know, while the pandemic has maybe slowed fundraising somewhat, it is still busy. And I want to shout out something that started with this committee, which is our NYC Votes Contribute platform, which was a platform that was conceived by our previous chair of the Voter Assistance Advisory Committee to provide a platform for candidates to easily raise contributions over the internet. And that platform has really sprung up and done incredibly well in, you know, during this pandemic. 184 campaigns used that platform during the last disclosure statement and raised over $150,000 using that platform. So that was something that started here and has really taken off. Finally, I want to remind everyone that next week marks a major anniversary in voting rights. On August 18th, marks the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which allowed women to vote. Hard to believe that it's only been 100 years in our country that women have been allowed to vote, but you know, it's a major anniversary. And finally, I want to say that yesterday I had the pleasure of attending one of our youth civic engagement workshops led by Olivia Brady. It was incredibly informative and wonderful. And if people who are watching want to become partners with us and attend one of those trainings, I really wholeheartedly welcome you to do so. And with that, I will turn over the program to Olivia Brady, who will shepherd in all the wonderful young people we are going to hear from today.
Thank you so much, Amy, for those very kind words, and Naomi for that very invigorating speech. I just want to give a couple opening words to set the tone for the evening and talk about why we're here today. But just to introduce myself, my name's Olivia Brady. I'm the Youth Engagement Intern for NYC Votes at the Campaign Finance Board. Thank you all so much for being here today and taking the time to listen to the young people who are sharing their thoughts with us. Although we can't be in person, I'm very proud and excited to kick off our second annual We the Young People hearing. This is a space, albeit a virtual one this year, that is by, for, and about young people sharing their experiences and perspectives on civic engagement, local government, and how their city interacts with them. Amidst a global pandemic, uprisings for racial justice, and massive budget cuts to education and other youth programs, dedicating space to uplift young voices is vitally important. At the Campaign Finance Board, we believe that our young people are our future. We're at a moment where we have tremendous potential to change our world for the better. And in that, as a city agency and as public servants, we have a responsibility to consciously center and uplift the voices in our community that are most often silenced. that includes dedicating space specifically for youth. Over the last year, our youth work has expanded rapidly. Thanks to the support of our staff, particularly my direct supervisor, Sabrina Castillo, the 2019 Summer Street Team, and then myself and my former co-intern, Maya Vesneski, we were able to launch our brand new youth programming, We Power NYC. Since our inaugural youth VAAC hearing last summer, we've trained nearly 800 young people, implemented a peer-to-peer educational model, partnered with the Department of Education for Civics Week, hosted a CUNY voting summit in February, and most importantly, launched our pilot We Power NYC Ambassador Program. In the middle of an unprecedented pandemic, I might add. All of this just scratches the surface of the work we've accomplished over the last year. At the core of everything, however, has always been making genuine connections with young people across the 5 boroughs and empowering them to insert themselves into the political process, especially at the local and state level where we know young people can be most powerful. Young people are extremely passionate and knowledgeable about the issues they care about. But what we found in our workshop is that youth cite a significant lack of civic education in schools as a reason for their low voter turnout. This, combined with a myriad of socioeconomic factors which we know to affect voter access, and particularly right now the lack of online voter registration for young people without a state ID, creates a cycle of low youth voter turnout, especially in local and state elections. Our youth work seeks to increase voter turnout by bridging this gap between on-the-ground activism and institutional knowledge of voting and government. Today, 17 young people will share their experiences, thoughts, and recommendations about how to make our city a better place. This testimony will be used to inform our youth programming going forward into the 2020 and 2021 election cycles, and it will also be shared with other city agencies and elected officials. Thank you so much to everyone who has prepared a testimony for us today. This is a really important step in making our city a more equitable place. Additionally, several youth have submitted written, video, and creative testimony, all of which will be posted on our website for the public to view. Although the CFB has come a long way in our youth work, we still have a lot of work to do. This hearing is, again, just one step that we're taking to make space for young New Yorkers and center their voices in our agency's efforts to increase voter access. I'm so honored to be a part of this process and look forward to the future. If you're looking for other ways to get involved with our work, please be sure to follow us on social media at NYC Votes and take our pledge to vote. Additionally, we're sponsoring a civic artwork contest with Link NYC, so be sure to check out our socials and email blast for more information about this. It should be coming out early September. Finally, I just want to thank the incredible NYC Votes and CFB staff for their hard work and dedication to improving our democracy for all New Yorkers. Sabrina, thank you for your mentorship and unwavering support of our youth work. Sean and Matthew, thank you for always including young people in our phone banks and other outreach efforts. Thank you to all 32 of my incredible We Power NYC ambassadors. You've all done amazing work this summer, and we wouldn't be able to put this event on without your help and outreach. Mitchell and Charlotte, you have been so great in helping us promote this event. And also you've been so supportive of expanding our youth content on social media, which is so important to our mission. And then finally to Amy and the board, thank you for creating this space for young people. I know our youth work looks really different than anything we've ever done before, and I really cannot thank you all enough for your openness and your trust. I'm extremely excited to see what the future holds for our agency and for young New Yorkers around the city. With that said, I'd like to introduce Lauren Lee, who is 15 years old and one of our We Power NYC ambassadors. She is going to give us a presentation on who the ambassadors are and what they've been working on. I'm just going to share my screen. All right. Can everyone see this? Awesome. Lauren, go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Lee. I'm a 14-year-old from Brooklyn, and I'm currently a rising sophomore at Stuyvesant High School. Today, I'm here to present to you guys about the We Power NYC Ambassador Program, which I'm also a part of. We are a group of 32 young individuals from all 5 boroughs, and using the peer-to-peer model, we provide voting and civic engagement information to other young New Yorkers. We mainly use social media as a platform to distribute our information regarding these topics because it is way more accessible to a younger audience because social media is such a common platform that young people often rely on. As ambassadors, we really want to start conversations about voting, elections, and civic engagement with our peers because especially about local and state level elections, because these elections are extremely important and people often don't know how important they are. We are trained on effective digital organizing and communication strategy, so we can post on social media effectively to spread awareness of upcoming elections, remind young voters to register, share information about voting rights, and promote NYC Vote Youth events. These are just some examples of the work we have done. These are some story posts from my peers. Yeah, and we also did permanent posts on Instagram. We also have bi-weekly meetings to discuss local issues and plan events. These meetings are mandatory, but we also have optional meetings on the weeks we don't have mandatory meetings. And they are really fun, and we do a lot of things that help us learn. And some of the events that we did were the letter writing event, in which we wrote letters to voters in swing states to encourage them to vote. We've also had a documentary screening about Robert Moses to learn more about urban planning. And we even recently had a college roundtable in which college ambassadors gave advice to high school ambassadors. We also had phone banking for the June 23rd primary to encourage areas of low voter turnout to vote. We also did We Power Wednesday Instagram takeovers, in which ambassadors did a story takeover on the NYC Votes page on Instagram. And we are currently working on creating educational resources for other young New Yorkers, which is our final project. I'm personally working on voting reform with my group members, and we are working more on reforming voting accessibility and making sure that civic education is available in marginalized areas with voting suppression. So why is youth outreach so important? I really think that this map really sums it up. It's a map of voter turnout of young New Yorkers by neighborhood in 2018. And just by looking at the key, you can tell that the highest percentage that New Yorkers voted in 2018, young New Yorkers, was 62.5%. That is really low, and we want to change that. And when you look at the darkest parts on the map, it is where most of the wealthy neighborhoods are. And we want to even out the playing field and make sure that no matter what socioeconomic class any young person is in, they still have access to civic education and they still have access to voting. And how are we going to close this youth voting gap? Well, again, the peer-to-peer model is super effective, and hearing the message about voting and civic education is the most effective when it comes from your peers. So ambassadors really try to engage a younger audience to start using their voices and insert themselves into the political process. We do this by having representation from youth of so many different ages, of all boroughs, so that we can reach a really wide audience. That is all I have for you today. I really want to thank Amy and the rest of the VAAC board for allowing me to present today, and the NYC Votes and Campaign Finance Board for supporting youth work. Thank you so much. And now we're going to move on to the spoken testimonies.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren. You are a star. I'm so happy to have you on my team. So we're going to move into the spoken testimony portion of the evening. So I'll announce everyone's names before you go up, and I'll announce the 3 names so you guys can prepare ahead of time. So the first 3 people that are up, Mira Dasgupta, Alexa Kitian, Mushfiq Milan. And for Mira's testimony, she'll actually be performing a spoken word piece.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Olivia said, my name is Mira. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the 2020 United States Youth Poet Laureate with Urban Word NYC and the National Youth Poet Laureate Program, as well as a current We Power Ambassador. Currently, I'm wearing a striped button-up shirt, and I have a bun in my hair, just so people know what the visuals are like right now because we're on Zoom. But I am going to read a poem for you today called Armor, which I recently read for Revolt TV for their program on voting with Sankofa. And it's something that I wrote recently, and just to preface it, I think that voting is definitely something that is very intrinsic and important for young people to be able to do. And we also have to acknowledge that there is a certain privilege that comes with voting, because like Olivia said, there's so many problems still with accessibility that we need to work towards, and so many issues within our global scale, which we also need to create our movements towards. So remember not to settle, and that this is the first step towards greater engagement overall. Armor. A hero is an ordinary individual who finds the strength to persevere and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles. Christopher Reeve. America was bred from ink and unbreakable union. With the turn of the decade, I expected the nation to remember its history at the brink, to be remade with revolution and evolution as a priority in which the people make up the majority of the solution. Instead, I found a country at a cliffhanger which hangs its citizens, close contact prohibited, people praying for their dead, a movement restabilizing the foundations of this nation built upon the condemnation of those who are born to be the concrete sit in sand grounding upturned limbs. It is no wonder that these wounds bleed black. The blood is a dead man's armor. The blood is an armor turned sword. The sword inks a body and its babies unto America and its unifying words, students, fists raised in protest, neighbors, hand in hand uplifting the rest, frontline workers, besting a virus which left us unfiltered and alone. From our homes, we stand united. Vote not as an individual, but as one of a lineage knighted by the pen, not the hand. It is during these uncertain times that we must understand the bones and lessons of those who have come before. To not ignore the horizons above crashing turbulent shores. To not ignore the cost, for there is so much left in store, for it is only when we continue to swim, continue to rise and make ourselves known that we, as the people of this nation, can truly learn to mend and grow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mira. It is always a pleasure to hear a poem from you. Just in case anyone missed it, if you go to our social media, Mira and I did an interview together about youth voter turnout, and she also performed a poem. But thank you again. So next up, we have Alexa Kitian. And just as a reminder, when you get on and start talking, Jordan will start a 2-minute timer. So just keep that in mind.
Hello, Good afternoon. My name is Alexa Kitian. I am a We Power NYC ambassador. Today, I am testifying to discuss the great importance of absentee voting in NYC. Up until recently, I noticed that people were only able to do absentee voting if they were sick or out of the city. And now it's only accessible to people that don't want to risk infection. Despite this new opportunity, many are not aware of it. And I care about this because my own family doesn't have the information available or recognizes the opportunity that they've been given. And I think the best way to combat this would be by providing advertisements in different types of media, such as TV channels for different types of culture. And for the youth, it could be in music apps such as Spotify or Pandora. And we could also invest in other ads in social media as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexa. Next up, we have Mushfiq Milan. Jordan, is Mushfiq on the stream?
Oh, sorry. Hi everyone. Can you hear me? Hi everyone. My name is Mushfiq Milan. I'm a rising senior from Martin Van Buren High School from Queens. I'm also Bank of America intern for 2020 and also Questbridge College Prep Scholars as well. And also I'm a We Power NYC ambassador. Uh, Today, I will talk about why as a student, why our voice matter in voting. When we look at the election, we see that there is like a lower turnout for young voters, such as the student, especially. Why the student don't want to vote? When I research, the majority of the time, it seems like they have some stereotype about voting. They think like they're not eligible, or sometimes it's the push doesn't come from the government or sometimes the society. But as a We Power NYC ambassador, we try to solve those simple steps and the obstacles and try to engage the youth. Uh, as a We Power NYC ambassador, we hit the platform that the student use the most, which is Instagram and Twitter. We try to push stories and sometimes interactive testimonies so that the youth and the students can know the importance of voting. The youth is an important part of democracy, and this time the youth will lead the powerhouse of democracy, because this is the uncertainty that we are facing right now. And I think when we try to engage youth in a different youth engagement, civic engagement program like this, we will have more people to vote, and democracy will have the best change in their life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mushfiq. So our next three speakers are Anne-Marie Gajos, Katarina Kaur, and Joshua Lee. So Anne-Marie, you are up next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anne-Marie Gajdos. I am a 22-year-old Slovak American We Power New York City ambassador from Staten Island. I am honored to get the chance to share my thoughts on the importance of online voter registration, or OVR for short, with all of you. In my senior year of high school, I registered to vote at a voting awareness event in my AP Political Science class, and I received help filling out my registration paperwork. A few years later, my younger sister missed class the day of this annual event. As a result, she struggled to correctly fill out the necessary registration forms and find a way to drop them off the DMV. If she had been forced to undergo the same process while living under a pervasive health threat like COVID-19, she likely would not have been able to vote in this year's primary. With nearly all in-person voter registration events canceled due to the global pandemic, young voters run the risk of not being able to register to vote in time for the critical 2020 presidential election, an election in which young voters, who tend to be more liberal than older voters, have the power to severely sway results. A lack of fiscal advocacy for voter registration has resulted in a 48.6% decrease in voter registration from 2016, a decline that disproportionately impacts young people. In addition, 2020 marks the first year that the US Census is being offered in a digital format, a decision that was implemented long before COVID-19 came around. If we as a nation can transition to a virtual platform to allocate more than $675 billion, then we should be able to do the same to allow over 750,000 New Yorkers who don't have a DMV-issued ID exercise their right to register to vote. Furthermore, the New York City Campaign Finance Board has already vetted OVR, spending several months testing it to ensure that it is effective and secure. OVR encourages youth to directly tackle problems caused by a bipartisan political system by giving them more options to share their voices. It provides youth with power, and that is why we will never stop fighting for it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Anne-Marie. Next up, we have Katarina Kaur.
Good evening. My name is Katarina Kaur. I'm 16 years old and from Manhattan. I'm currently a rising senior at Stuyvesant High School, and I've been passionate about government and public service since middle school. Most recently, I've been involved through the We Power NYC Ambassador Program and the FEMA National Youth Preparedness Council. One of the most common questions I get asked by adults as a student involved in government is, what advice do you have for other students aspiring to become involved in their communities? I think that this question, above all else, reflects the lack of civic engagement education in schools. Going into my senior year, although having taken a myriad of history classes, I've yet to take a comprehensive course on civic engagement in government. In my opinion, waiting so long to provide students with information about elections and government processes is a disservice. Unless students actively seek out information on government themselves before their senior year of high school, when they are months away from not only becoming adults, but also eligible voters, they might not know the fundamental beliefs of the different political parties, how a national election works, or what exactly their local representatives do. I believe that to supplement this lack of exposure, materials should be created targeting elementary and middle schoolers. I believe to effectively engage elementary schoolers, an informative activity booklet could be created that guides students in understanding different types of representatives and the legislative process. As opposed to a picture book or a lesson, the activities will encourage the students to directly practice their new knowledge. For middle schoolers, an online toolkit could be created detailing organizations in New York City and steps to becoming involved in their communities. These two initiatives would serve as excellent opportunities alongside those already offered by New York City Votes, including the We Power NYC Ambassador Program and civic engagement seminars. All in all, I am confident that an introduction of these resources would help fill the civic education gap facing younger students. Ultimately, this would culture a generation of students who are much better equipped going into high school to be effective and meaningful community contributors. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Katarina. Next up, we have Joshua Lee.
Hello, my name is Joshua Lee. I'm a first-generation Korean American and a We Power New York City ambassador from Queens. I'm also a fourth-year political science and communications double major at Baruch College. As a high school student, I was an active advocate representing the student body, immigrant, Asian, and Queens County communities with an organization called Asian American Student Advocacy Project, short for ASAP. With ASAP, I advocated for several issues such as language access, comprehensive guidance, and also for a more inclusive and diverse curriculum for public schools. Looking back, my advocacy work and civic engagement were both possible all thanks to a friend of mine called Emily, who invited me into an info session. But in retrospect, if I didn't have a friend like Emily and a program like ASAP, I honestly do not think I would have been interested in politics or be civically engaged like many Asian Americans today, sadly. Some of the reasons just being language barriers and lack of quality engagement from political parties, but I believe that needs to change. According to Center for American Progress, historically, Asian American voter turnout has been low, despite being one of the fastest growing racial groups in the country. By 2036, it is expected that the AAPI votes will continue to rise as much as nearly 10% of the eligible voters. And I'm just testing my experience as an Asian American student and also an immigrant. It needs to change starting from pre-voting registration for both high school and college students to eliminating other barriers to voting. And one recommendation that I would like to stress is to encourage higher voter turnout is by making pre-voting registration for both high school and college students more accessible, and to also prioritize Asian American outreach to political campaigns. Most political campaigns fail to engage all high school students and college students, and also Asian American community properly. Let's change that, New York.
Thank you so very much, Joshua. I should mention as well, the first speakers that went up are all We Power NYC ambassadors. But moving forward, our next three speakers are Maria Ordonez, Pavan Lohia, and Jessica Cohen.
I don't think Maria is here, so we're going to go to Pavan next.
Okay, awesome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pavan Lohia. I'm a clinical researcher at Mount Sinai Hospital and a recent graduate of the CUNY School of Public Health. And I'm here today to talk about the importance of being engaged in our elections process. Most importantly, I want to urge that young people become involved in their local and statewide elections, as well as our national elections. As a public health worker, I think this is especially important given that our health and safety is at the center of everyone's lives now more than ever it has ever been. More so, why our local elections matter is because it impacts our day-to-day lives, from issues of social justice all the way down to wearing a mask in the times of COVID-19. As a student leader at the CUNY School of Public Health, I've worked with students from all 5 boroughs and across the tri-state region to make sure that they're engaged in their voting processes, as well as engaging their local leaders and administrative officials to increase voter turnout. Whether you win or lose, I strongly believe that stay committed to your cause and keep working with your community and the individuals that help you make our community better. Make sure to vote and spread the word with quality and useful information for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pavan. Our next speaker is Jessica Cohen.
Hi, my name is Jessica Cohen, and I'm a member of the Participatory Budgeting Youth Committee in Brooklyn. Participatory budgeting is a process in which council members annually set aside money for projects that will improve their district. Community members propose how those funds should be spent, and they later vote on the most popular ideas. Through PB, the city has implemented storytelling gardens, mobile showers for homeless people, sewing circles for domestic violence survivors, and other initiatives that are thought of by residents who know what is needed the most in their district. Participatory budgeting is driven by community members, not officials, and is reliant on civic engagement. It is even more unique because the voting age is 11. When I asked middle school students how they would use PB funds to improve their school, one student proposed that there be funding for more school clubs, and the kids listened attentively. The young students realized that they could have a direct voice in decisions they had never been included in before, and understood that PB was a way to bring forth the change they wanted to see. Now, we face questions about school that are much more uncertain. Many of us are returning to get our education in places without adequate ventilation, proper air conditioning, or clean bathrooms and sinks. Safety is further a concern as there is discussion about removing police officers in schools and hallways who disproportionately punish students of color. Young people will be confronted with these issues, and yet we are not given a platform to discuss and propose solutions. Through participatory budgeting, we not only have a voice, but have a means to address these problems that impact us the most. It is therefore necessary that PB be continued on a citywide level this year, and that there is a large effort to include young people in submitting ideas and throughout the process. Many of us here are passionate about civic engagement among youth, but are too young to vote in elections. This year, the city must support the only process that listens to and represents middle school and high school students. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Okay, so our next three speakers are Audrey Siahaya, Eileen Vasquez, and Hridita Islam. So Audrey, you are up next.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Audrey Siahaya, and I had the honor of being my class's salutatorian when I graduated remotely from Union Square Academy for Health Sciences, a new high school in New York City that exposes students to careers in pharmacy and dental technology. As someone that is most passionate about health sciences and concerned for the safety and education of my community, I'm excited to have the opportunity to share my thoughts about civics and education during this pandemic. I recently wrote an article for the PS Museum about how open air schools were used in the beginning of the 20th century as a response to Spanish flu, and it made me think about the city council member Brad Lander's proposal to use surrounding streets for educational purposes, what is now being called the Open Street Schools program. I believe high school students are old enough to stay at home and learn online. However, elementary and middle school students and students with special needs are most vulnerable to falling behind academically and should be given more space to learn in person, especially outside school buildings. I've learned a lot about how the students about the city's plans for my sister's school meetings. I have two siblings that will be attending school in the fall as preschoolers, and my parents are wary of the thoughts of having them experience their first day of school in a school building. However, if the classes were outdoors, not only would these younger children get to enjoy classes with their friends, many parents would feel more comfortable allowing them to go to school. Outdoor learning not only addresses overcrowding and social distancing, but students from the past described it as entertaining. I want to encourage everyone to include the youth of the city in all community conversations. If we really seek a more democratic country where young citizens vote, run for office, and are involved in making their communities better, we need to ensure elementary, middle school, and high schoolers alike experience civil discourse and civic action in school and perhaps right now out of school. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Audrey. Next up, we have Aileen.
Hi, my name is Eileen Vasquez. I'm a junior in the Beacon School and co-founder of PB Teens in District 38. When I first learned about PB, I knew it was something I wanted to be more involved in. I gathered a group of friends to help me get started, and we emailed Council Member Carlos Menchaca, our City Council member, to set up a meeting. Right now, we work together along with the PB Youth Committee in our neighboring district to make changes in the community. Many of the people in this town hall are passionate about youth voter engagement, but are too young to vote in the elections themselves. Through participatory budgeting, young people can address needs in their community and see the significant impacts of their involvement in local democracy. Right now, our government is not being transparent with the community. We are not sure if PB will even continue this cycle, and yet we need youth voter involvement now more than ever. A system that allows kids as young as 11 to vote and submit ideas may not continue this cycle. We should support teenagers to do what I did and start PB teen group in their district. We ask you to support PB in all districts and organizations like Coro to increase engagement with PB and youth voting. There needs to be a better way to outreach our community, such as including PB in different languages. In my district, the majority of the residents speak Spanish and Mandarin. That way we don't leave anyone out of our community voting. All of us here care deeply about getting as many people we can to vote PB, and PB is the way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hidrita, are you here? Okay, I don't think she's here, unfortunately. So we'll move on to our next three speakers. First, we'll have Angelina Bland, then Denise Bautista, followed by Sophie Sue. So Angelina Bland, you are up next.
Hello, my name is Angelina Bland. I'm 15 and I'm from the Bronx. I'm also a part of YVOTE, where they encourage civic engagement and inspires young voters to make a difference when voting and outside of voting. I care about youth voting because my peers and I alike have a voice and our choice matters. The New York voting system only had 16.4% of youth voter turnout in 2018 compared to the eligible 31% of voters. And sadly, the 16.4% was an increase in youth voter turnout compared to previous elections. There are not many polls on college campuses, so then students have to drive long distances to get voting polls. After the long drive, they have to wait in ridiculously long lines to vote, and that's if they have access to a car or other forms of transportation. Also, many people who wanted to vote through absentee ballots were failed by New York City because the majority of the absentee ballots were mailed the day before the primary election. The recommendations I have is to put more voting polls on college campuses and to give out more advertising on absentee ballots and online voting in order for everyone to have the chance to vote. Also, to give the youth more resources to be encouraged to vote and to be educated on the importance of voting and how their vote can have a massive impact. Thank you for letting me testify tonight.
Thank you so much, Angelina. Next up, we have Denise.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Denise Bautista, and I'm an incoming freshman at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. What would you know? You're just a stupid kid. You're too dumb to understand. Shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. These are just some of the phrases that I have heard in the 17 years of my life. We are more than this, but sadly, many chain the youth to these labels. If these labels had even an ounce of truth, how is it that I am up here today? It's because I gave importance to it. I can't say that I did it entirely alone. I did receive guidance from some teachers, but this isn't the case for many students. As a student, you go through many years of school before even hearing about the importance of voting. Yes, you learn about the movements and the history behind it, but it comes off as another lesson, just some material for your next test. Picture this, it's your senior year, and there you are, being thrown information for 42 minutes. In less than an hour, we're expected to see the importance behind the right we have fought and continue to fight for in some situations. That is absurd. This is something that must be built up over time. I say start as early as elementary school. Go into the classrooms, ask them what they know, what they want to know about voting. Be a part of educating and not criticizing. This issue extends beyond the four walls of the classroom and it bleeds into the homes. It bleeds into the homes. My family has never spoken to me about the importance of voting, and I don't blame them. Because of our Latino background, we've heard things like, go back to your country. You don't belong here. This isn't your home. Do they vote? Yes, but it isn't something that is encouraged or even expected of them. Many families don't see the importance of voting, and because of how society treats them. This is then passed down, and now you have multiple generations being unheard. A way to fix this is by having groups to reach out to these communities, listen to their stories, again, help by educating them, host workshops, get creative, make it fun. And please don't only do this when elections are around the corner. The importance should be there throughout the entire year. You want to get more of the youth at the voting booth? Let them know they matter. Let their parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles know that regardless of their background, they matter. Let them know that the world wants to hear what they have to say. Give them the attention and respect that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Denise. That was a very powerful testimony. Next up, we have Sophie Zhu.
Thank you for letting me speak today. I am Sophie Zhu, a 17-year-old youth activist from the highly diverse Flushing, Queens. At my majority Asian Pacific American, or APA high school, a lot of youth who can vote often say they won't, simply because they have other things to do or think their voices don't matter. This trend is far from uncommon. My neighborhood has countless undocumented APA immigrants who do not vote because they lack access to both the ballot box and needed information. The burden then falls on under-recognized and overworked community-led organizations to get out the vote every election season and canvass on streets, which COVID-19 has made virtually impossible. Because of the model minority myth, the racist lie that many Asian American groups are hardworking, submissive, perpetual foreigner worker bees, many people in power undervalue our voices, leaving us out of conversations that most impact us. When we internalize that we don't belong in spaces of mainstream arts and politics, we may leave them. This action unintentionally invisibilizes our severe poverty, unaddressed mental health conditions, lack of language access, housing injustice, and more. It burns deeply when we realize there are 1 million eligible Asian Pacific American voters in New York State alone. The fact that you may not have heard of this racism by omission before today, the fact that the census rarely breaks down data to account for the issues that hit different ethnic groups differently, are proof of this racism. So as we focus on equity, empathy, and youth-centered justice, we must increase civic engagement among APA communities, translate materials in various languages, place them in community hubs, such as laundromats for transparency. Do whatever you can in your power to include and advocate with marginalized communities of color. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sophie. Okay, our next 3 speakers are Ramya Gopalakrishnan, Marissa Gomez, and Durga Srinivasan. So Ramya, you are up next.
Hey, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to speak fast. I apologize to get it all under 2 minutes. My name is Ramya Gopalakrishnan. I'm from Brooklyn and I'm 23 years old. I'd like to thank Olivia Brady and all the members of the New York City Campaign Finance Board for offering us the opportunity to testify today. I represent Generation Vote as the National Organizing Director, where we are championing a new model of civic engagement for youth. Today, I wanted to share my experience trying to vote in the June 2020 primaries, where I experienced a classic case of voter suppression that made it clear to me how easily the elections can get away with being unfair, and afterwards make recommendations to the board so we can have a truer democracy. I submitted my application for an absentee ballot on June 5th and received a confirmation email from the BOE, but waited days and no ballot came. I called the BOE and on 2 separate occasions, they say, you never submitted an application. I read them the confirmation email. They say they'll look into it and call me back, but neither time call me back. I'm angry at the incompetence, so I call again right away and a different person answers and says, it looks like it was sent days ago, but must have gotten lost in the mail. My application couldn't have both never been submitted and my ballot got lost. He says to let the BOE know all of this, but the faith and trust to hold one accountable can't be placed back into the institution that did the misconduct in the first place. There was simply nothing else that could be done that day since I couldn't go in person. I could not vote. If voting matters so much, why aren't we doing more to protect it? I know my story resonates with so many young people across the state who experienced this June alone. Therefore, I wanted to make the following recommendations to the board. Misconduct, confusion, and mistrust surrounding voting early on disheartens young people, making them less likely to be engaged in the future. This is a form of voter suppression. We need civic education early on and then a system that follows through on its promises. I suggest clarity on how to register, when, who your candidates are, and how they're financed from one source being the board, as well as a tracking system for the status of your application and ballot so you immediately know if something didn't go through and when a ballot was sent. Also, we can't rely just on voting by mail. This fails a lot of immigrant households, and this issue, the issue I had just emphasizes the importance for more safe and accessible poll sites in communities and on college campuses for early voting and on election day. Thank you all for listening, and thank you to my fellow testifiers.
Thank you so much, Ramya. Next up, we have Marissa Gomez.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marissa Gomez. I am 23 years old, a third-year law student at Fordham University School of Law, and I am Miss Greater New York this year, which is a local title within the Miss America organization. This year was my first year voting in New York because I moved here a few years ago from California and hadn't changed my registration until recently. But both myself and my peers found New York primaries difficult to navigate, not only because many of them did not receive their absentee ballots, but also because so many voters had no idea that New York is a closed primary state. New York City voters deserve to know that when they're looking at their voter registration form and they're choosing whether or not to associate with a party, that they're also deciding whether or not to be able to vote in a primary election. Another issue with the closed primary system is that the deadline to register for a political party is different than the deadline to register to vote. New York City voters just simply don't know that 2.5 months prior to Election Day, they must pick a party to vote in the primaries. New voters have up until 25 days before the election. And the voter election website doesn't exactly specify who this deadline applies to. When I asked if new voters must apply by the voter registration deadline for political parties, I was told yes on one occasion and no on the other. Now I know that existing voters have to adhere to that deadline, but I think that more transparency and an ease and understanding is essential. I think that this information needs to be easily accessible, widely promoted, and widely understood so that people who want to get to the polls have the tools to be able to if they would like. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marissa. Next up, we have Durga Srinivasan.
Hello, my name is Durga Srinivasan. I'm from Manhattan and I'm 17 years old. I'm lucky enough to be the Rising Student Body President at Hunter College High School. So as a student in the city, the lack of civic education in our core curriculum is like a slap in the face. I'm going to graduate this year and I haven't been told in any of my core classes that my vote matters, that policy, campaigns, and candidates all tied into our vote dictate so much of our day-to-day lives. Campaigns and candidates As I'm sure many of you are aware, there has been an incredible surge in youth activism. People my age are hungry to get involved, to shift societal values. However, students aren't given the means to do so. As co-executive director of Coalition Z, a national organization with 30 high school-led chapters, one of our core initiatives has been increased voter registration. We have helped hold Student Voter Registration Day in our chapter schools, having to create our own civic engagement FAQs, voter FAQs, and had to print out all of the forms ourselves. At my own high school, we've had to run it completely as students since the 9th grade. On the mayoral website for Student Voter Registration Day, it reads, if you are enrolled in an NYC DOE school, talk to your principal about your school's participation. But figuring out how to register voters should not be the job of kids or grassroots organizations. It has to be structurally ensured through methodical outreach and tracking. And in terms of civic education, when people do receive it, it's not applied evenly across our populations, making the need for a universal civic education curriculum in schools especially crucial. As per usual, schools with resources are able to deliver, while our underserved communities are held without the opportunity. According to Altogether Now, a report recently bolstered by Harvard, opportunities for civic learning and engagement are highly unequal. White, wealthy students are 4 to 6 times as likely as Hispanic or Black students from low-income households to exceed the proficient level of the NAEP assessment in civics. In our city's responsibility to secure democracy, it is our city's responsibility to secure democracy for our students. The Department of Education and NYC Votes must ensure that every single NYC high school needs and deserves a voter registration and pre-registration drive, with appointed faculty to run it and given proper resources so that no student is overlooked. The DOE must also ensure that that curriculum and that civic needs are fully integrated in our required government and history classes through a robust curriculum, and that being registered to vote must be a graduation requirement. Although many of us who have testified today have tried, you are the ones who have the power to make structural changes so that life is truly equitable in our city for all and not just those who have direct access to our political system. With crucial elections coming up, it is the city's duty to give young people the ability to exercise their rights and vote for who they want to represent them. We must meet the moment and hear the rallying cry of our young people and commit to building a more representative city. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Durga. So our last two speakers for the evening are Jessica Sui and Hridita Islam. So Jessica, you are up next.
Hi. Oh, can you guys hear me? Hi, my name is Jessica Sue, and I'm an incoming freshman going to SUNY Albany. The importance of voting, the importance of the youth's voice. As people that reside in the US, we have the power of voting. We have the power to put into office someone who represents us. Being educated on the power that we give our politicians is important. Knowing the power that we give to them, they have to fear that it can be taken away just as easily. We put them in office to represent the people and our needs, all of our needs, no matter our differences, and not just the big corporations. 70 days. That is how many days I've been protesting for basic human rights, like food on our plates and a roof over our heads and mental health services. They say they don't have enough money for it, but they have $11 billion in the NYPD budget, while they take it away from other budgets. Officers that are supposed to serve and protect are doing quite the opposite. And no PPE during a pandemic, but NYPD purchased riot gear to harass civilians. There are people under the governance of these representatives that are being discriminated due to skin color, sexual orientation, and disabilities. Some of these discriminatory remarks can make these people fear stepping out of their houses and having to look behind their backs and fear for their lives. Put yourself in their shoes. Would you like to consistently live in fear? And wouldn't you want to make policies that reduce that fear? Big politicians with actual power to change living conditions see protesters as more of a nuisance. They don't see us and our demands as a threat, but they have to understand that they can be voted out. We, the people, have to understand that we give them the power and we can take it back just as easily. I am 17 years old and I cannot wait to the day that I turn 18 and have the power to vote and elect officials that actually care about the community that they represent. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And last but not least, we have Radita. So please hop on and close us out. Thank you.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Radita and I'm a rising sophomore at John Brown High School. So here's my testimony. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. Martin Luther King Jr. For many years, we've been told that young people can't vote because they're uneducated or not mature enough. But why are all these people who have failed to educate us get to decide if we're mature enough or not? Here's some background real quick. On July 5th, 1971, President Richard Nixon formally certified the 26th Amendment of the Constitution, which granted 18-year-olds the right to vote. The very ironic thing was that prior to that date, 18-year-olds were old enough to get married, pay taxes, and work, but not vote. However, in the House of Representatives, only 19 out of 419 congressmen opposed to it, and it was sent to the states to be ratified. It took just about 100 days to receive the necessary 3/4 majority of state ratification. This added 11 million potential voters to the electorate. According to a census data, in the 2019 presidential election, ages 18 to 29 voters were about 45%, which is the same as when voting for younger generations started. Well, the question is, why haven't we improved? For me, in my theory, it is because the lack of information and the lack of experience were given. In 1966, when a major change in the school curriculum took place, that caused many of the important classes to be taken off. For example, before schools used to offer some kind of civic courses, but now in classes we're taught a lesson or two about voting is important in our duties as citizens. Moreover, we're told that any kind of political topics can bring controversy. But I want you to ask yourself as an audience, how often were your history classes built upon the idea of voting? They told you voting is important and they left it off. Correct me if I'm wrong though. Here is the reality check. Our school system has failed us in terms of educating us about the real issues. This is why we need to demand for change. We need to give students the experience of voting at an early age. And your question might be, how so? In high schools, we're getting prepared to be lawyers, professionals, doctors, but why not a good voter? Why not a good citizen? Which is why I propose
that we hold elections for our own school officials. Why don't we have a say in who's going to be our superintendent? Why don't we have a say in who's going to be our chancellor? By holding elections for our own schools officials, we will be participating and getting the experience that many of us lack. It is not fair to us when those officials are sitting there and making decisions about our lives, our education, and our future when we haven't even elected them. So think about it. Here's a quote I leave you with before I go. If you don't vote, you lose the right to complain. George Carlin. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Radita. And thank you so much to all of our testifiers. Many of them worked with me to develop their statements, and a lot of time and energy has been put into this on their end. So thank you so much. It's very brave to get up and share your story with everyone. So next, I just wanted to leave a few minutes for if the VAAC board has any comments or questions, and then if there are any questions or comments from the audience, but we'll start with members of the board. And I think the easiest way to do this is if you're able, just use the raise hand feature, and Jordan or I can assist you with that or unmute you. Danielle.
Yes, I just wanted to thank everybody for making such great for presenting such great testimony, and for taking the time, and for being so passionate and so articulate, and really identifying a lot of the things that we as members of the VAAC board agree with you wholeheartedly, and would love to be able to wave a magic wand. Unfortunately, in the absence of being able to do that, we have definitely heard what you said, and we are definitely going to be reaching out to people who can help put a lot of this, a lot of these ideas into action. So thank you so much for taking the time, and please keep up the good work, and please keep up your activism.
Thank you so much, Danielle. I see Christopher raising their hand, and then we'll have Amy.
Thanks so much, Olivia, and thank you to all of you who testified. Very compelling. Just a little bit about myself. I'm a political scientist by training. I've been teaching at the college level for almost a quarter century now, which is hard to believe in my estimation. I did teach in the CUNY system, so all those CUNY folks, congratulations on getting through your degrees there. You know, one of the things that happens that I think the testimony of all of you really highlighted was that young people tend to get blamed for not voting or not being interested or caring in the process. And we tend to do that a lot, and we don't focus on the structural barriers to voting that really hold individuals, whether they're 18 or 65 or 70 back, making it easier to vote, providing the information, national holiday on election day. Those are structural barriers that these young folks that testified really are putting their fingers on that we need to remove. We need to remove these barriers to voting because the behavioral argument just doesn't fly anymore. The one structural barrier that I found compelling in some of the testimony, which I don't think this body can do much about, is civics in high school, and even civics or political science at the college level that are required courses. I would love to remove that structural barrier as well. I think we focus too much on professional training and not citizenship and civics. But we as a committee will certainly focus on the structural barriers that we have some say in. And I want to thank all of you who really highlighted that, because that's the vital key here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Christopher. Amy, I know you had your hand raised.
I just wanted to, I mean, my comments are very similar to what Daniela and Christopher just said. It's, again, thanking all the young people. It's, you know, I agree. It's like often we blame young people saying, oh, why aren't you, you know, you don't care, you don't listen. And again, you know, over and over, my experience with the young people and NYC Votes has been that they are more committed than, a lot of people who are, even the students who spoke who aren't even eligible to vote yet are, more committed than, adults who have been able to vote for, many years and don't exercise their right to vote. And so, again, I commend you, and I like the idea that so many of these students are eager to have more school, to get more civics education. Normally, like people are think that young people don't want to have less schooling, and so I mean, again, there's not much we can do about that, but again, providing materials and making sure that the information is out there that people can use and promote to their peers is, incredibly vital. So thank you all, and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much, Amy. Were there any other members of the board who wanted to make a comment? Okay, fantastic. Were there any CFB staff members who wanted to say anything?
Olivia, this is Charlotte. I'd love to speak briefly to some of the comments that were made about the ways that we're promoting and sharing information about how to vote. I'm looking forward to kind of rewatching this testimony tomorrow, where I'm not trying to like run the technical controls, but I really appreciated that a lot of people pointed out and shared ideas about how we could be, running campaigns and doing the kind of things that are part of my job as the Director of Marketing and Digital Communications. So thanks for those ideas. I also wanted to share that we are going to be working with the We Power NYC ambassadors on kind of like a mini pilot of actually using participatory budgeting to do some of our media planning. So decide where to place our advertising. And so if there are people who are watching this who are not ambassadors currently and would like to get involved in that process, I wanted to extend an invitation to get in touch with us. You can get in touch with Olivia, whose name was on the RSVP page. We'll put her information in the chat. But we really welcome those ideas, and we'll see how this kind of pilot goes working with ambassadors. And I'll be thinking some more about how to make sure that we're including young people in those decisions about how we structure our campaigns and outreach.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. Any other staff before we move on?
I just want to take a couple of seconds. I'm Sabrina Castillo, the Director of Partnerships and Outreach, and I really just want to thank Olivia for her hard work and leadership in putting this together and creating such a unique experience for the ambassadors to be able to share their ideas. But I am confident that there are more than ideas, and that she's working on with them on how to implement them, which I think is the big piece that we want to work on with everyone. So Olivia, thank you for your leadership on this project, and for organizing the VAAC meeting, because it wouldn't be where it is today if it wasn't for you and your colleagues that you mentioned. This is the second one, and I hope that it continues in the years to come at the Campaign Finance Board. So thank you, Olivia.
Hear, hear.
Thank you so much for those kind words. And we'll take a comment from Radita, but I do want to say that I'm working really hard to try to be in as many classrooms and as many community centers doing workshops as I possibly can. And that's why we're working with the ambassadors to train them to facilitate our curriculum. But any young people in the audience, if you know teachers who are looking, or schools who are looking for more civic engagement curriculum, please send me an email, connect me with your teachers, any youth leaders I'm happy to work with you all. But I'm so sorry, Radita, feel free and chime in.
Yeah, I want to just take a moment and say thank you for allowing us to actually speak and say what we have. And I was kind of hesitant to say anything because I asked Olivia, I was like, should I say something about chancellors and super? Because I was like a little hesitant, but I felt really confident. I felt like we have a voice in our community, and especially the things that's going on. I feel like we are the ones, like us young people are the ones who's going to be making big changes. So thank you guys for listening to us. That's all.
Excellent. Thank you so much. But if no one else has any comments or questions, I see someone raising their hand. Christopher.
Yeah, just really quickly, there was a time, and those folks who have been in New York City a while, the Board of Education was elected, or at least there was a panel that was elected, and that changed about 18, 20 years ago, right? Right, Amy? And so, you know, maybe there's an opportunity for us to go back to an elected Board of Education, but it used to be that the Department of Education was at least elected by, or members were elected by, the New York City residents, and that included non-citizens a long time ago. So what comes around goes around, perhaps.
Thank you for that comment. Did any other attendees have any final comments or questions for any of our staff or our board?
I think Angelina did. I just promoted her.
I saw, okay, that's why I didn't see her. Go ahead, Angelina.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you to you all for allowing us to testify. I'm just really passionate about like youth voting and having the youth having their voice heard. So just thank you for listening to us.
You are very welcome, Angelina. And we work with YVote a lot. Angelina is part of YVote. So thank you for very last minute joining us today. You guys are a great partner and we're always happy to work with you. Okay, any other final comments or questions? Okay, so for all those who testified, I will be sharing your emails with each other if you want to include your social media handles so you all can connect. I highly recommend it. There is power in numbers, so make sure you use this opportunity to actually connect with other young people from across the boroughs. Again, I do want to say thank you to Amy and to our board for holding this space for us and for really empowering young people to say what they actually feel and for really taking their considerations seriously. Unfortunately, it is pretty rare for adults to do that. So we're in a very lucky city agency that we actually have a culture where we do that. But I think that's kind of all I wanted to say. Luis, I will take a comment from you. I know you're from the CUNY Coalition for Students with Disabilities, so go ahead.
Awesome. No, I just wanted to thank you all for inviting us. We're really excited and great to be at this event. It was an awesome event. And a couple of the CUNY Coalition for Students with Disabilities members joined as well. And it was just incredible. And we're looking forward to continue the collaboration and working together as a team to make a difference, definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Louis. And also we are working on implementing a peer-to-peer communications model with CUNY leaders, which Louis is going to be a part of, and the CUNY Student Coalition for Disabilities. I'm sorry, I always mess up that acronym, but I'm really excited to have you guys on board for that.
Awesome.
Okay, so I think that's everything. I'm not quite sure what the proper way to end a Zoom testimony hearing is, but that's all we had to say from the Campaign Finance Board and from our Voter Assistance Advisory Committee. So just, again, thank you all so much. I really can't thank you enough. And if you have any questions for me, I dropped my email in the chat. Do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Olivia.